what we have here is our infiltration table, where we have 5 different soil treatments over years, and we're going to see how much water runs off versus how much soaks in. And what we have, the first one is a cereal rye cover crop that we took these right out of the field. We have a cookie cutter type piece of equipment that slices the soil out that we put right into these trays. So this soil is intact, and this is original cereal rye that was growing, that we planted last spring, that we mowed down this fall. We also have 20 years plus of no-till, corn, soybean rotation. We have a pasture. This is a mix of grass and legumes. This is worked soil. This soil has been what's worked every year that we have. And then this is a tall fescue sod. So it has a lot of grass roots in it. So what we're going to see is we're going to look at runoff, which would be coming in these front ones, versus infiltration. How much water actually goes down into the soil. So with that, let's turn it on. So we can see all the rain sealed off, so it won't go into there. Probably like a 6-inch per hour rain, which we get many of those. It doesn't rain 6 inches, but we may get 1.5 inches or 2 inches. So we'll see what happens to the soil under such an intense rainfall. I think it's interesting that we are getting some runoff on the no-till. 1 year is a no-till and we're getting some runoff, but at the same time, we're getting infiltration. Look at the far right with the cereal rye cover crop, no runoff, but all infiltration. Uh-oh, now when we see our tilled, massive amounts of runoff. It's actually missing it on there. A little bit. Fescue sod. No runoff, very little. Infiltration. It's also good to know what color the infiltration is. How much soil residue that it has. Just think, if you get a great big rain, you get a big 2-inch rain, you think, all right, we're done for the year, for the week, for irrigation. Tilled ground, how much water actually got to the ground? 0. But if no-till or cover crop, we get almost a full amount that goes in. Compare the amount of soil in the no-till runoff versus the sod. A lot of soil still in it. Compared to the cover crop, very little runoff, and what it is very clear still. You can see that the tilled ground continues to flow, the water. The sod continues to drip water down through the soil profile. Now think about this on flash floods, when the creeks rise, if all of our soil has been tilled, are our creeks going to rise pretty quick? You bet they are. That's why. But if we try to see no-till, or we have sod, or we have even cover crops, it may take 24 to 48 hours for the creeks to start rising, because so much of the water stays within the soil profile. When we start out with our tall fescue sod, we see that we got mostly water infiltration and very little water runoff. But what's interesting is the color of the water is almost identical that has ran off versus that has infiltrated through the soil. Now, when we've had our tilled soil, we see that we most exclusively have runoff, and we're about 5 to 10 minutes when we quit. Now we're starting to see the water and the soil starting to separate. That we've got a fair amount of soil that has washed off this plot, and very little has actually infiltrated the soil. The mixed stand of grass and legume is somewhat similar to the tall fescue, except look how much darker the infiltration is compared to the runoff. Again, very little runoff, and what we did have runoff is not much soil in it, but we did lose some soil through the sinking. Probably is because this mixed stand has a lot more bare ground in it than what we have in the sod. So when we do have legumes, there is that possibility that we could get more soil movement downward, but not off. All right, no-till. This is a corn, soybean no-till for 20 plus years. As we've seen, we have a lot of our water has infiltrated through the profile, much more than even the mixed grass and legume species or even the tall fescue, but we are seeing more runoff. Again, it's not very dark compared to the conventional tilled, but we are losing some soil in it, but we do have a lot of infiltration. This tells us maybe these soils aren't holding quite as much. Maybe the pore space is not as good, even in no-till, as it is in a sod that we've seen before. Now this is a cover crop, but I must say this cover crop is 1 year in cover crop. It was tilled many years before this every year, so we have a damaged soil, much like we see over here, with 1 year of cover crop. And I think that helps explain what we're seeing. We're seeing lots of infiltration, tremendous amounts of infiltration, because and none, very little, if none, of the water is running off. The cover crop is preventing the runoff, but our soil is damaged enough. It hasn't completely healed like a no-till or these sods that we are getting a lot of the water going straight through versus staying into the soil profile. But what do y'all expect to see? Mud or dry? Dry. All right, let's see. Oh, darn. It's very dry. Very, very dry. All this water that came off did not go in. Now you planted some seeds in there, Ray. Did it get to the seeds?
Let's see if I can find the seeds.
Yep, there they are.
See them?
One right behind you there.
Right there. All right, right here.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, with that rain, right there's the first seed. It did get the moisture.
But that's about as far as it got. So any type of drying, it's going to dry out before it's going to sprout and then die, more than likely.